When did I become a fan of music? Well, I could say this as a kid. I wasn't. I was. I liked music as a kid. I mean, I wasn't as enthusiastic as my sisters or as my mom. My sisters were more into the MTV kind of thing than I was. As a matter of fact, I was going. Me and my mom were looking at the albums about a week ago or so. About a week ago or so, because my older sister had to come and get the cable box and help install the new one, the DVR. And one of the records that I saw were two of them actually were Cyndi Lauper and Bobby Brown, and those were my sisters, my older sisters anyway. And she even pointed it out. So she was more. She and my other older sister, second older sister, were more into the music MTV kind of deal than I was. I was more like, just a kid, like they were. They were kids too, but I was more of a kid that was like, I'd rather watch cartoons, play with my action figures, or play in my room or whatever, or play with my toys, kind of stuff, and not bother with it, or like I said, just watch cartoons and not be bothered with it. But there were some unique perspectives. I mean, like I said, I wasn't as enthusiastic as they were, but I did enjoy music. Matter of fact, one song that got me really into the music, believe it or not, was "Beat It" by Michael Jackson. And from what I understand, this is like one of those songs that do get you into music, if not into the artist that sings them. And as soon as I heard "Beat It," that became like my song. That was like, man, this song, every time I enjoyed it, I just danced to it. I think I remember as a kid, my late grandfather, had a lot of albums. So basically that's how I got introduced to Michael Jackson's music, through the song "Beat It." And then I started to enjoy all these other songs that came on as well. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, I have my family and relatives that liked Michael as well, but I was the one that, when "Beat It" came on, it was like, Brian, there's the song, just beat it. So when the song came on, or the video came on, it's like, just beat it. And yeah, I've always been a fan of his. And, I have a majority of some of his albums. I was a little sad that he had passed, but a few years ago, but I do have some of his albums, so that's pretty good. Um, But Michael wasn't the only one I was in, that got me to sort of enjoy a little bit of music and kind of tune into MTV every now and then just to see what was coming on. I remember being a fan of Transformers, and when the Transformer movie got announced it was coming out to theaters. I remember one time, I think it was after the movie was in theaters, or it was just getting into theaters. I remember my mom calling me over into the living room because we had cable. I think this was when we lived on Harder Road in Hayward, California. She called me over and I said, "Well, what is it? What is it?" And she pointed to me what was on MTV at the time. What was on MTV was Stan Bush, and it was the Touch video. And I remember just watching it, and my jaw was just dropped. If you will, I was like, and you can imagine maybe a 6, 7 year old kid, 8 year old, about a 7 year old kid at the time, being a fan of Transformers, and all of a sudden you see the music video for the movie, and you're seeing footage of the movie in that video, and you're like, you can only imagine how I felt about that. Just to realize that I was seeing the music video and actually seeing footage for the movie in that video. And besides Stan Bush, another person that got me into enjoying music, especially when it came to the video aspect of it, was Peter Gabriel. It's hard to believe, but Peter Gabriel got me into his kind of music as well. I mean, I didn't even know much about the guy. I thought he was a new guy, a new artist. Just being a kid, I didn't know much about the guy, so I probably figured he was new. And that's my dog in the background. She's barking at something. But I pretty much figured he could be new and all that. So, I didn't really know much about him. I don't think my mom knew much about him either. But I just remember watching the video, his music video, which has basically become, as many people put it, the most influential music video of all time, and that was Sledgehammer. And again, you got to imagine back then being a 6 to 7 year old kid, and here comes and on comes this music video called Sledgehammer, and it's mostly a stop motion claymation music video. And being a kid, it just really sparks your interest. You don't really know what he's talking about. You don't know what the lyrics are about until you get older, and you're like, oh, of course, that's what he meant by Sledgehammer. That's what he means by this and that. But I remember just watching that music video as a kid, and it just mesmerized me. I'm sure being any kid at that time, anybody who was a kid at that time got mesmerized by that video because it was so unique. It was so different. It wasn't, some artist just in a building or on a stage just singing the lyrics to a song. Here you had a guy, literally, as you look back now, thanks to the internet and his Blu-ray as well as his DVDs, you find out this guy was actually just sitting down and sometimes laying under a pane of glass for many hours, just getting this thing shot and done. And again, it was so, for a fan, for a young kid, it was so unique because, here you had somebody that when the lyrics of a song would come on, visually something would represent those lyrics. Like when he talked about the one that really stuck out in my mind and always was a unique aspect was when he was talking about fruitcake. And all of a sudden you see all this fruit and I guess vegetables flying around him in a circle, and you would think, okay, it'd probably just be a cage or something like that, right? No, it just flies around him and all of a sudden in a circle, and then all of a sudden it just engulfs him and then reforms into a fruit version of his face. I'm not lying, into a fruit salad version of his face. And then when he says open up, during that part, you see, all of a sudden you see his fruit salad face just split apart. And it's like you see in the background, you don't see anything but nothing but that green and grass. And it's like, oh man, and as a kid, you're thinking, wow, he just became his face just turned into fruit. And it just split apart. And then, of course, you had the claymation parts where, you had his hands turn into sledgehammers and beat himself in the face, and you had this little, I guess, Peter Gabriel show up on there, and all of a sudden his face just splits up, and you see nothing but his lips on the wall, and all of a sudden his lips get covered by a yin-yang face, and the yin-yang face turns into fish and then into the water, and all of a sudden the water sprouts out into, I guess, a blue tree, and then all of a sudden you see its face again, and all of a sudden it turns into abstract art. And again, it was really a unique video for a young kid to watch because it was meant, because at that time you didn't know how they did it. For all you knew as a kid, it was like it was real. It was like, oh man. I mean, think about it. You go to school the next day in first grade or kindergarten. You're talking about the video, and you're thinking, "Yeah, did you see that video where that guy turned into a fruit face, or that guy, all of a sudden turned into this clay thing, and all of a sudden his face turned." You could just imagine the conversation back then when that video came out. And again, you see the influence of that video in other videos as well. I mean, one of the closest I can think of is Elizabeth Cook with Stupid Things. There's this scene in her video where she gets tied up by this phone cord, and all of a sudden she gets spun around, and then all of a sudden you see these little pieces, not as elaborate as Peter's was, but you see all this fruit going around. You see this fruit going around, and she bites into this watermelon, and then you see all this other fruit show up, and all of a sudden it's like I say, not as elaborate as Peter's, but you see like a fruit version of her face, if you will. And you have all these little Tupperware stuff behind it. So that was kind of cool, and I think a little bit of an homage to it. And then, of course, you have, I can't think of her name right now, but it's a girl that did a song where, the lyrics were, "This is the saddest story," and stuff like that, and it's basically a stop motion video, and at the end of it, she goes into this little castle goes from being a human into a like a stop motion character version of herself. She goes into like this castle or this house, and she starts pulling herself apart a little bit and everything. So, and then all this big glow comes out, and it's a unique video, and it kind of I think also pays homage to that as well. You know, and again, there are videos that have paid homage. I mean, Peter, when he did Big Time, sort of paid homage to the facial part of it as well. Oh, with a lyric where he said, "So much stuff I will own." Yeah. And again, of course, there are people that do remake his songs as well. Like one girl called Maheja, I think, remade, as people put it, a soulful R&B jazzy version of the song. And I think the only homage maybe to any kind of uniqueness to it was when you saw her go behind this dressing screen and saw nothing but a silhouette, and that was it. And people did say they liked the song, they liked it, but there were others that didn't, you know. But there were others that didn't, and of course, like I said, there were some that did. I think it was mostly they liked the song, they just didn't like the video. And I think the reason for that is, in their minds, if you're going to remake something like Sledgehammer from Peter Gabriel, song-wise and everything, you need to, yeah, you could put your own unique spin on the song, but you need to have a video very similar to what he did. So in other words, I guess they were expecting maybe Maisha to have a video to where very similar to his, where she was like, you know, she would sing all those lyrics and everything, just like with Peter's video, the original video, would happen to her. So, and I think that's what they were expecting. So that's why they would come out and say, "Oh, we only like the song, but we don't kind of like the video that much." But you know, give credit where credit's due, and I truly believe it's, you know, it's going to get remade. I mean, there is news going around that the Sledgehammer video is going to get remade, and it's going to be basically, you know, not just Peter himself, but he's also going to have fans' involvement as well, where fans will have the submitted video clips of certain scenes from the video, there's certain remakes of scenes from the video incorporated into the remake. So that's kind of cool to look forward to. But, you know, again, it was just those kind of things that got me into music. And, of course, you had Mousicize, Disney, and those things like with Mousicize that got me into it as well. And then later on, as I got older, became a teenager and all that, and, you know, got into other kind of music. You know, so, but basically that's how I first became a fan of music, if you really want to know. But that's all I could say.